Born in 1932 in Birmingham, Alabama. Talk to me about what you remember when you were young.
Well, I was an only child at that time. My brother and sister came along. Beth was born in '39, so I was 7 when she was born, and about 9 when my brother was born. So we were living in Birmingham, middle of the Depression. Mother and Dad had a job down in Montgomery, but I was living with my grandmother and an aunt and uncle. I like to say that I was 5 years old when we moved to Nashville, Tennessee. Before I knew I had an Aunt Mary and a mother, but I was 5 years old before I figured out which one was which. But
so that depression really tore your family
tore
apart.
our family up. Dad had work, and Mother had work, but they had to go to somewhere else that wasn't in Birmingham. It was in Montgomery.
Right.
In '37, Dad got a job in Nashville, Tennessee, so we moved to Nashville. Stayed there until '41, and my brother and sister were both born in Nashville. And '41, we moved to Pensacola, Florida. He had a job with the power company down there, and I was in the 4th grade, I guess, when we moved.
Well, now you guys have survived through the Depression, and now World War II is breaking out. What are your folks telling you? What's happening now?
I knew it was going on, but it didn't make much impact on our lives. Dad's job was, age and job kept him out of the Army or out of the military. We had military, of course. Pensacola was a Naval Air Training Center, and we knew a lot of the guys would come to the church or visit church. Got to know some of them. We had the house we were living in had a great big many-year-old live oak tree in the front yard. And one day this young naval officer came and knocked on our door, asked if he could, said he saw some dead wood and stuff up there and wondered if he could come trim it out. He'd worked for the tree expert service. And we said, sure, glad to have somebody that knew what they were doing to come take care of it. We got to know him fairly well because he came back several times. Turns out he was in the Navy Medical Corps because he was a tree surgeon. But we thought that was kind of funny that he wasn't really didn't know anything about medicine, but he was a tree surgeon, so they put him in the medical corps.
Now you were a few years older than your siblings.
Yes.
So when they came along, what was that like for you?
Later on, when I got I was built-in babysitter, which was all right as far as I was concerned. They didn't particularly like it, but we
little power over those siblings.
Yeah. So, but we got along reasonably well.
Now, do you have any remembrances of your grandparents?
I do not remember my father's mother. My grandfather, his father, was still alive and active, and we visited with him and knew him real well. My grandmother on my mother's side I had lived with for years, and she died in the mid-40s, so I was old enough to remember her pretty well. My grandfather on my mother's side was dead before I was born.
So you went to high school in Florida, Pensacola?
Went to high school in Florida, Pensacola, Florida.
What was high school like for you?
I was, I skipped a grade in school because when I transferred into the Pensacola system, they put me in a combination 2 years grade, and I made 2 years at one time. So I was a bit younger than the rest of the kids, and I wasn't big into the social or the football or any of the athletics or any of that stuff. I did a lot of the work in the school with the physics professor, and I did a lot of ran movie projector and stuff for the classrooms. And
so when you were in high school, were you already starting to think about a career path?
Not really, although when I was in high school, I worked for a radio repair shop. I was basically into, Dad was a radio ham operator, and I had been kind of around that for years, and I had always figured I'd probably wind up in engineering. Some bright bureaucrat up in Washington somewhere in the late 40s said that there wasn't going to be any need for engineers because they were shutting down everything and we wouldn't need any more engineers. So I started thinking about another career path. Went off to Emory University in Atlanta because my aunt and uncle lived there and they wanted me to come up and be there. My uncle was traveling a lot. Thought it would be nice to have somebody that could drive my aunt to the grocery store and stuff on weekends and that sort of thing. I should have known I was in the wrong place that first quarter there because we had 3 required courses. One was a foreign language, one was an English overview course, and one was a math course that covered everything from algebra to calculus. Just kind of an overview survey. Well, everybody was doing great in their English, and most of them doing real well in foreign language, and having a devil of a time with the math. Me, on the other hand, I was doing great in math, pretty good in English, and not doing worth a darn in French. So it took me a couple of years to finally figure out that I was in the wrong place and transferred to Georgia Tech. Of course, then that backed me up. Our draft board couldn't understand how I could be a sophomore 2 years in a row and be making satisfactory progress, so they decided I need to go off and play soldier for a while.
Well, talk to us about your career. I know the Korean War was going on.
Draft board decided I need to go in the service for a while. They sent me off, put me in the Ordnance Corps doing anti-aircraft artillery fire control system maintenance. I went through basic training and then went to Aberdeen, Maryland to the Ordnance School, learned all about these drive systems and the controls for the anti-aircraft guns. And then they assigned me to a ordnance maintenance outfit that was going to Japan to replace all of the World War II version anti-aircraft fire control radar systems with a updated out of the Nike, one of the offshoots of the Nike missile systems. And so I spent a year, and it took me a year before I got there, and I spent a year in Japan, stationed on an Army air base there in Japan. We were a little 12-man ordnance outfit, not near gung-ho and spit and polish enough for the artillery boys, so they got us a place off on the air base right across the parking lot from the Army mess hall, the Air Force mess hall, and about 2 blocks from the flight line. So we had mess quarters at the Air Force, through the Air Force, so we didn't have Army food, we had Air Force food, which is generally a little better. And if we got too hungry otherwise, we could walk down the flight line because that was open 24 hours a day. And other than being in a green uniform, I didn't know I was in the Army hardly.
Right. Now you're stationed in Japan.
Stationed in Japan.
How did the local Japanese people accept the American servicemen?
I had no problem with them, but then I didn't, I would go to town with them. They were very courteous and nice to me, and we would chat, but they seemed to be accepting of the things. I didn't make a big deal out of them, and they didn't make a big deal out of me.
Yeah. Did you have any fear, though, over that?
Only the fact that I was driving a left-hand drive car on a right-hand, needing a right-hand drive when I out on the road trying to go from artillery battery to artillery battery to fix something. You wondered whether you were going to get hit with something, but you get used to it.
Now the war comes to an end, you come home. Pick up from there.
I came home. I had met Patsy before I went off to the war. Came back. We had corresponded. She was actually doing one of her, when I was in Aberdeen in the Ordnance School, she was doing one of her out-of-campus rotations to get pediatric training in Columbia Medical Center in New York. So I got a couple of 3-day passes, and we met up there and had a couple of dates that way. Did a lot of riding back and forth. When I came back, she and my aunt and uncle came up and met me at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, bring me back to Atlanta, and we just, went from there and decided to get married.
Do you still have those letters that you guys were corresponding with?
No, I don't. they long gone. I have no earthly idea what happened.
Okay. Now, in your lifetime, Richard, there's so many things that have gone on in the world. Is there something that just really stood out that affected you?
Of course, the Kennedy assassination, 9/11, the Challenger and Discovery disasters with the space program, the Apollo 13, while that turned out all right, it was kind of hair-raising to begin with. And just the general speed with which things have changed over the years has always amazed me.
Mm-hmm. Now, talk to me about your career. What did you get into?
When I left, I was got my bachelor's in electrical engineering from Georgia Tech, came here to Texas Instruments, started working on military electronics. It was the first thing I worked on was little aircraft intercom systems that they were building out of some of the first early transistorized stuff that most everything before that had been vacuum tubes. And I went just various and sundry kinds of military electronics, everything up to air traffic control, radar display systems. I did a bunch of seismic oil exploration display work.
Is there something that you really think was like a huge leap from what you might have been doing years ago to the technology today?
Everything. When I graduated from college, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of radio, radar, computers weren't even, they existed, but they were room about the size of this room and, very rudimentary, and I didn't know much about them, but by the time I got my master's degree, I'd learned a little bit about that. This day, there's no way in the world that somebody coming out of college could have a good handle on any of that. They've got to specialize in college.
What was the best day of your life?
When I married Patsy.
That's a good answer. Thank you.